Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mighty Oaks Show. Glad to have you with us today, coming off of the Thanksgiving holiday. And I trust that in spite of everything, you had a great Thanksgiving celebrating with family and hopefully with a lot of family. That's what we need to do this year, celebrate with a lot of family. But we have been having a great year here, of course, and getting back at it after the holiday and looking forward to spending a few minutes with you. And for those of you that are not familiar with the Mighty Oaks Show, thank you for joining us. Always a privilege and an honor to have new folks join us on our YouTube channel or perhaps over with our friends at Mojo 50 Radio. And we're so thankful for those that listen and those that support. If you are watching on the YouTube channel, thank you. Go ahead, if you have not, subscribe and hit the notification bell. That lets you know when more content comes online. And I say this as often as I can, but we are constantly putting new content online on our YouTube channel, testimonials, information about our organization, the Mighty Oaks Show, other shows, clips from other things that we're doing, constantly putting new content out there. And all of that is there to help you and to be a blessing to those that you know, as well as perhaps those in your family or yourself. If you are listening over at Mojo 50 or listening to the podcast, take some time when this is over to go over to YouTube, look up the Mighty Oaks Foundation or Mighty Oaks Warrior Programs, and you'll find us there. And go ahead again and subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you find this interesting or helpful, share it out with someone else. Go ahead and leave us a comment. Would love to communicate with you there and thankful for the opportunity to do that. This show, for those of you that do watch or listen regularly, you know that most of the time we talk about overcoming trials in life and overcoming difficulties in life and dealing with traumas and dealing with obstacles and dealing with all of the things that we all have to deal with in life. We share great stories and testimonials, and we're always thankful for the opportunity to do that. Once in a while, though, we take kind of a different turn, and it's good to get different perspectives on so many of the issues going on in the world and in our lives. Last couple of weeks, we talked to the development director for the Mighty Oaks Foundation and talked about really what that means and why that's important and how all of that works. And it's always fascinating to me to hear where people come from, the different things that God does in their lives to bring them to a point where they can be used where they are right now. And this is so important for us to understand, of course. We've talked about that. And today is a show similar to that. Today we have Michael Hanson. Michael is the COO, Chief Operating Officer, Operations Officer for the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And Michael, you've been with us for almost 6 months.
Yes.
Right at 6 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
Flying by fast.
Flying by fast. This year's been crazy. What a great year to join a new organization.
Oh yeah, I mean it's been an honor. It's you stay 6 months, but it feels like one.
Yeah.
Not because of COVID, but because we are very busy here, and it's been a blessing. Yeah,
and a lot of what you've done in the last 6 months really is looking over what we've done up to this point and kind of evaluating who we are and where we are and projecting how to go forward.
Yeah, I think that's the business analyst part of me. It was it's a lot of fun to be able to come in and take a look at Mighty Oaks, and I think what I've learned so far is really what a great job you guys have done so far. Now that's always a relief. Now
you don't have to say that just because you're on the show, but
no, there's always those scary skeletons that you discover when you go through this process. And those skeletons don't exist. I'm glad you get great people, great team. The programs are amazing. I even went through the programs. And to see all this come together and look at the timeline, the history of Mighty Oaks, what you, Chad, and others have done, is you can just really see the work of God in it.
Sure.
Now, that's always a nice thing. It's just fun for me to be able to come in and take a look at this and say, okay, you've come this far, done so great. God, what's next?
Right.
How can we, what does 2021 look like now?
Yeah.
Let's get involved in that. Let's dig into that. And we've had many conversations about that, so we're very excited about 2021. So I've kind of gone through the process of looking at the who, what, when, where, why of Mighty Oaks and everything. And I seriously did a lot of exploring as far as who you are before I ever got here.
Yeah.
And my heart was just captivated by what you do for our veterans, our first responders and so forth. And I thought, wow, these guys got big hearts and probably a lot of energy in order to get that done. And
we're getting older, so the energy is waning perhaps.
And they got to be prayer warriors for sure.
Yeah.
And so it's just been an honor.
Yeah, this has been an interesting year for everyone, but for the Mighty Oaks Foundation, for those that have followed along, that have listened to us talk about our history and where we came from, really just starting, and we've told that story many times, but just trying to get going and help as many people as possible. And we've come to a point in the last couple of years where we have realized if we're going to continue to grow in a way that is meaningful, and in a way that is helpful, in a way that allows us to reach more people, then some things are going to have to change. And as we're getting into this conversation, we'll talk about a lot of things, but it's important for people that are listening to understand that this isn't just a conversation about kind of the behind the scenes of Mighty Oaks. It's understanding that whether it's in life or in business, wherever it is, you can't continue to go forward by only doing the thing that you've always done.
Right, absolutely.
And that's where we've had to come to as an organization. And again, we introduced folks to Kevin a couple of weeks ago, and various folks that we've added to our team over the years. We had to make a decision that in order for us to continue to do what we believe God has called us to do, then we have to add some people to the team that bring a level of expertise with them so that can happen. But like you said, that man, particularly for me, who's been administratively running the organization for so long, asking someone like you to come makes me feel almost like, I think I described it to you like I'm going to open all the doors on my desk, and you're going to look in and find whatever's in there, and hopefully it's okay. That's where the skeletons are kept, and it's never been intentional, but we've just kind of done our best with baling wire and duct tape to keep things moving. And it is a little nerve-wracking to have someone like you come and see what we've done and figure out what's been right, what hasn't been, and how to move forward.
Well, even in my own life, the old saying, never be the smartest person in the room. You got to surround yourself around people who,
right. I've never been the smartest person in the room. So.
No, and we never should be, and we should always be aligned with people who are our mentors, who are our leaders, who can teach us new things, so that we don't get in that rut that you're talking about. And it's easy to stay where you are; it's comfortable. We all know that.
Right.
We can stay there for 10 years. Yeah. Mighty Oaks could stay there for 10 years. But let's not, because of its mission, its purpose is so needed, so heavy, that, when I started looking into just the programs, the effectiveness of the programs, honestly, I'm thinking, how does Mighty Oaks do this well in a short period of time? That I was a little skeptical. That was probably the one thing I was a little skeptical to. And so I did actually go to a program. I spent 6 days there. So I was able to witness exactly what Mighty Oaks and all the leaders do. And man, it brought me to tears. It was amazing. It was so amazing to watch these men. It was a men's group, the Legacy program, and to watch them come in so cold. I'm not going to say hi to me or anything.
Right.
And I thought, man, how are they going to change this in 5 days? Because I've grown up also in the corporate world and with some mega churches as executive pastor. And it is a real challenge to get someone from a lost, hurt state into a relationship with God. Yeah. That can take weeks, and Mighty Oaks is telling me they can do this in 5 days. It can take years.
It can take a long time. Yeah.
But come about day 4 in the program, some of these guys who just told me that they're done. They were just done. They're going to leave their families. Their kids don't like them. They're just over. And I'm thinking, man, this is hopeless. Yeah. And I'm thinking, good luck, Jeremy. And
good luck, team. From Mighty Oaks. Yes.
Yes. But to go through that process with the guys, the leaders and everybody, I was just so impressed. That by the 4th day, these same men who just given up on life, have no hope, were saying, man, I wish we could stay here longer. Yeah. And so I'd ask, why? Why do you want to stay here longer? I really want to know. And they gave the greatest answers, and they really wanted to, as much as they were giving up on their families, they really wanted to hold on to their families, but they just didn't know how. Yeah. And as I watched each of the leaders teach a session, it was so relevant in today's time, the situations that these men were going through, that you did not want to miss a session. Right. There was nobody late to a session. They're all watching what was going on. And over that slow period of time, the way that we met in our groups, we met together, we had one-on-one time, we had some recreation. They had a great week. It was a great week. Yeah. And by the last day, it was hard to say goodbye to everybody. So the funny thing is when I left, my wife picked me up and she goes, well, so tell me all about it. And I'm like, you know what? I just need to sit back in this car seat for just 20 minutes and just close my eyes and decompress a little bit, because I was just that overwhelmed of the greatness of what happened there. And to watch them bring faith into the program in such a non-threatening, casual, but in-your-face way was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
So it was quite amazing.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Let's talk about your background a little bit, because again, this is something that is always fascinating to me, just as an observer of other humans, but also looking at my own life to see where God brings us through things and has us do things, and we don't know how it's all going to fit together, but eventually it does into exactly what He wants us to do. Your background, your professional background, primarily has been in the business world and in the church world. So people don't always see those coming together.
Right.
But talk about maybe where you grew up and your background, your faith story, and then what you've done professionally up to Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, well, in my first job, go back in time now, okay? For those of you who can remember, you'd bring your bottles to the grocery store and they'd hand count them, 5 cents, 10 cents, so forth. I was that guy. I was counting bottles.
You were the bottle counter guy.
Stinky beer bottles, Coke bottles, the whole 9 yards. That was my first job. And but I moved up through the company, and we started working in the district office and started working in different places in the organization. They really sent me different stores to get certain training. At that time, I was thinking, what is this? This makes no sense to me. I'm driving too much. I keep going to, about the time I get adjusted to a store, they move me to another store, and I was young. But going back in time, or looking at this, I guess you could say, is you can see how God had moved me to get training in different areas. I was getting training in accounting. I was getting accounting in human resources, inventories, losses, risk management, all kinds of things. And that's how it's been all my life. So I kind of like said, you know what, I just need to follow this thing, because this seems to be where God is bringing me. And as I guess the world was starting to teach me how to be a businessman, then I resigned and I went to work for a church and watched it grow from, gosh, I bet you 50 people to about 5,000.
Wow.
And did that a few times with some other churches and so forth. But it gave me an opportunity to take some of this stuff that the business world teaches very well and bring that into the church world, which seems to overlook some of that.
Sure.
And they don't handle that very well. They don't know nothing about business law. Well, they're better at it nowadays. But then I went back to business. I kind of went back and forth throughout my career, and I was always able to bring a little bit of the business savviness into the church world. But I always brought the church world into the business when I started working in business. In fact, I'd always tell everybody, listen, I'll work hard, I'll work smart, but I don't work Sundays.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they would get that, but then because I go to church. I go to church, and then I go to church with my family. Thankfully, I was always hired. But that kind of like throughout my career had helped me to navigate through being a Christian man and being able to be in ministry, an executive pastor for churches, and then also be able to get some education from the businesses. And then I finally earned my master's degree. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring some of this to the life of the churches. And it's just been my life. I love it. It is a ministry. Yeah. You know, everything should be a ministry in my eyes, and so it was a ministry being able to work with churches like that.
Yeah. Were you I'm going to say Christian? Did you become a Christian as a young person, or was that later in life, or was that as a result of growing up in a Christian home? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. I probably when I was about 6 years old, we had a huge family reunion.
Where were you living?
And this is in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, yeah.
And my grandmother said, they'd call me Mikey when I was a little boy. And she said, Mikey, come here. I'm like, what? You know, I got all these kids to play out in the yard with. And she says, I'm going to show you some things. And she says, she sat me on her lap and she started telling me about Jesus. Oh. And I was like so fascinated about it. Now I had learned some things about Jesus, but my grandmother got in pretty detail. To this day, people talk about how Mikey sat on Grandma's lap for over 3 hours just listening to Jesus.
Right.
And some of them are like, thank goodness he's talking to Mikey, because we had a reunion to go to. But that was a turning point in my life. Then my mother bought me my first Bible. And I just was fascinated with this Bible. I just started consuming it at such a young age. So that meant that when I went through grade school, junior high, high school, and so forth, I was a Christian. That my peer pressure wasn't, the drugs, the sex, the rock and roll. My peer pressure was my classmates wanted me to be that Christian guy. If I did anything out of line, that was my peer pressure. They'd say, "No, Michael, we don't expect that from you."
Yeah.
If I said an unclean joke or something.
Was that in a public school?
Public school,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And so I was the Christian guy going through high school, and that's the way they wanted it. Well, that's the way I wanted it.
Why do you say that's the way they wanted it?
Because at that time, you could say you're a Christian, everybody is a Christian.
I didn't know there was anyone that said they were a Christian in Portland. I didn't know that was even a thing.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to that too, yes. And so they wanted to hear, they wanted to see somebody who actually was a Christian.
Something authentic.
Yeah, and I think by that time, I was pretty authentic because I viewed high school as a ministry.
Right.
And I was active in my church, and it was a large church. So if I was to, there were some times when I remember I even said an unclean joke just to fit in, as a high school. I think I was a freshman. And my friend Aaron comes up to me later, because nobody laughed when I gave the punchline. My friend Aaron comes up and goes, "No, we did not expect that from you." I'm like, okay, I will never.
These aren't Christian kids.
No. They never wanted that. So then I ended up becoming kind of a counselor to my classmates, teachers, police department. Keeping in mind all that was great ministry. Everybody thought that I lived in this leave it to beaver type home.
Sure.
It was so perfect. We had the perfect Christmas and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is both my parents were the black sheep of their families. So we grew up in a divorced family. Plenty of drugs, bad street, that kind of thing. But I just told everybody, I'm a Christian guy. And so there were people actually they protected me as a Christian kid. They didn't want that good kid to be hurt.
Yeah.
So I was well protected, taken care of, and had a great time in my years. And then as I went off to college, then I went to Christian college for 1 year. And God's been a part of my life forever through so many things that it's been a good life. I've had the highs and the lows, but I always say, I don't know how, we were talking about it earlier, I don't know how people can live without God. Yeah. I don't know how they can do all that without God, because we need supernatural help that goes beyond what we can do.
Yeah.
And if you can get that, you need to get that.
Right.
And in fact, that's what I saw at the Mighty Oaks program. Is they were teaching the guys that same thing. And I even shared with some of them in my own testimony there that we have limits as human beings. Mm-hmm. We can only go so far on our own. We need counseling is good, medicine is good, hospitals are good, doctors are good, but when it gets right down to it, we need some help that goes way beyond us, and it comes from God who created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah, that's right. Man, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 3 hours you spent with your grandmother.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This is something that I think is important to note, because some folks believe if I grow up around Christians, that makes me a Christian. But there really is a moment where a person has to make a decision to put their faith in Christ. What was it as a young person, and you remember that moment or that time, what was it that your grandmother said in that 3 hours that really got your attention and caused you to see the world perhaps differently, or to understand things differently, that made sense to you at that moment?
Yeah.
This, to me, we could talk about theology all day long. I love having those conversations. I like talking about things that pastors and theologians like to argue about. But one thing that's true about the gospel, about having a relationship with Christ, is that as complicated as it is, as unknowable as so much of it is, to enter into a relationship with Christ is simple enough for a child to understand.
Right.
That's absolutely fascinating to me. What did your grandmother say to you that either put you on that journey or caused you to go, well, my faith will be in Christ?
Well, no, she shared with me stories. Some were some of the basic stories, Jonah.
Right.
Others were healing people of diseases. And then she also went back into a little bit of history about the greatness, the power, the authority of God. And I'm like, is he here?
Right.
And she talked more about the love of Christ than the discipline of Christ. Sometimes we keep a distance from God because he's our disciplinarian. We think, but if we could just understand how much he loved us. And when I was a kid, I thought, man, that guy died for me on a cross in this fashion, and it was all planned by God. I need to know a little bit more. I think there was also a sense of, well, there's definitely a sense of peace as she was talking to me. I think she had been praying about this before I ever sat on her lap. Yeah, right. That I was very responsive. You can't, a 5-6-year-old doesn't sit there for that long without being entertained.
Yep.
And I think that was the Holy Spirit's moment to where, in his supernatural way, captivated my attention to keep me there. Nobody distracted me. Nobody came up to us. Yeah. It was our moment, and it felt like that moment.
Yeah.
So my grandma, from that day on, was more special than ever before. So there was something very powerful in that moment that a little kid can recognize.
Yep.
And so it's been a long time ago, so I can't remember all those details, but to this day, it's probably one of the most special moments of my life.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have some people growing up as a young person and as a teenager that, we would use the word mentor or disciple, invested in you so that you knew how to take a stand, what the Bible meant, why it was important, that set you on that right path? Well,
my church, but some members of my family were Assemblies of God pastors, and they were mentors. My uncle would pick me up on a bus back in those days.
Yeah.
And I was the only kid standing out in the street on an early Sunday morning. My family, they're sleeping, everybody was sleeping. I'm standing there out on that street waiting for that yellow bus to come down and pick me up. And sure enough, every Sunday there was my uncle. And so I was able to get to church to learn more about God. A little bit later, then my mom started giving us Bible studies and different things too. That they weren't the strongest Christian family, okay, but my mom knew that God was the right thing, and so she fed God to us. But but I always wished I had a mentor. I mean, probably to this day, God is going to push you out there. But in high school, I wish I had a mentor. I wish someone would tell me all this stuff. So I just had to go back to the Bible, had to trust God, and just take day by day.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think your experience in high school is one that, particularly those who would follow us that may be in the military or maybe in a very secular environment, need to understand that we try to fit in when really people who don't have a relationship with Christ, what they desire most, I think, is authenticity. They want to see faith played out. They want to see faith lived out. They want to see that it's real in someone's life, because all of us are looking for something. Mm-hmm. And whether it's in high school or somewhere else along the way, it doesn't matter where you find yourself, live out an authentic faith, and people will take note of that.
Yeah. And, that high school, like I said earlier, became ministry. I don't know that I really caught on to that so much as I was trying to just live a righteous life. Yeah. And I remember sitting in the library with all my classmates, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but I said, I'm a Christian. So the person next to me said, really? Well, I'm a Christian too. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. And I'm next thing they're all going around, well, I'm a Christian too. I'm a Christian. I'm like, oh, I would have never known.
Good job keeping that a secret.
Yeah, and so I thought, I think I got to do a better job at being a Christian. And so there's all that kind of pressure to behave, to be an example. And so it didn't matter if I was a freshman and I had seniors. By the end of that year, I had built relationships with even some of the senior classmates who, instead of picking on me, they embraced me. I knew they weren't embracing me, but they were looking for something in Jesus, and they wouldn't really always ask that question.
Right, that's right.
And they wouldn't say, pray for me. But if I said, can I pray for you? 100% yes. Okay. If I asked them if they had a Bible, no Bible. Do you want a Bible? Well, not really.
Slip it to me in a brown paper bag.
Exactly. So I was very careful about how that all worked out. But by my senior year, my classmates asked me to do the closing prayer, which was going to be wiped out. And they told me, this is what you get to say, and don't say this, and do not say the name of Jesus. A friend of mine a classmate of mine who was kind of my menace, he was just annoying. He comes up to me and says, so you don't get to say Jesus at the end of the prayer, right? He goes, I said, well, that's what they're saying. He goes, you're going to, aren't you? I go, you'll find out. And so I said a prayer when I closed in the name of Jesus. Everybody applauded that. That's just another sign that people really do want Jesus. Sure. They're not necessarily going to step out and put the banner on their chest and on their forehead, but people are looking for Jesus. I've always believed, as much as people say America is lost, it's not a Christian nation anymore. America has evangelized the world. Right. And I do believe that people are always looking for Jesus. They don't always say it, they don't know how to find it, they don't know where to go, which again, going back to Mighty Oaks Foundation, here's a Christian organization that can teach that. People are looking for Mighty Oaks Foundation. They really are. They just don't know where it's at. Yep. The devil's going to try and stop them from getting there. He's got to shut this thing down. Yeah. But he just can't. Yeah, that's great. You're married. You have 2 kids, 1 adult child. Yep. Which is hard to believe. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And then a teenager. How did your experiences growing up in that environment and doing the things that you just described, how has that shaped how you parent your own kids? Your oldest is involved in ministry. How has that shaped your influence on their lives? Oh, very much so, because I know how easy it is to get off that trail, that trail with Christ. Yeah. I watch it all the time. And we're very protective about our children. Sure. And like I said earlier, I don't know how people can live their lives without God. Yeah. That I wanted to make sure that me and my wife, we've been married 30 years now, we will always set that before our children. Yeah. We pray with our children. We read the Word of God. They know that my daughter's been in children's ministry. She now works for the district office of 400 churches in Southern California. And they know Jesus, but but it's also the prayer. It's me and my household will serve the Lord. Yeah. Okay. So the devil's going to go, right. Whatever. Sure. Yeah, sure. And there's going to be the challenges. Yeah. So what do mom and dad put in place to ensure that the devil cannot get in there? It's a huge responsibility. It's a lifetime responsibility. Yeah. And then when they grow up, like my daughter, she's 24, and she's solid. She has her challenges in life, and now she's her adult Christian person, wonderful woman of God. And so that is our priority. Yeah. I think having worked in the business world and in the church world, is the natural flow of our priorities is work first, because we have to make a living. Sure. Okay. And then family, we squeeze that in there. Yeah. And church, if we have time, it becomes an option. Yeah. Yeah. Or God, where it really, you work hard to make sure it's God, family, work. Now it's easy said. I've gone on that roller coaster too. Yeah. But on the long haul, it's always been God, family, work. Yeah. We've had great conversations about that. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute, because balance is something that all of us strive for, but very few find. Mm-hmm. You and I, both coming from a church ministry background, could name, probably many people over our, shared experience of folks who were very diligent in ministry, who had great ministries,
who did not end well. A family member years ago handed me a book by James Farrar called Finishing Strong. I don't know if you've ever seen that book, but it's an incredible book, and it's the idea that it's really not about how we start, it's not even about our middle, it's about how we finish that really counts. Now, the beginning and the middle lead to the end, but it's finishing strong, and so many in ministry don't finish well. They start well, they do a lot of incredible things, and then either their kids don't want to have anything to do with God or ministry, or the people that they have discipled and trained and taught over the years have concluded that faith and people of faith are hypocritical because that person didn't finish well. So balance is something we all want, but as you mentioned, we get that out of whack. How do you keep those things that way? How do you keep it God first, and then family, and then your work, when the ability to go to church and raise a family is based on how well you work? Because all these things work together. How do you keep that balance in those priorities?
Well, first of all, I'll say it is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It takes,
number one, don't expect it to be easy.
Right. But it takes a concentrated effort to remind you of the order of those priorities. It's a daily thing. When you wake up in the morning, what do those 3 priorities look like? How am I starting off 10 minutes in my day? And how am I working throughout my day? Where am I spending time to hear the Word of God so that my spirit is fed? What does my prayer life look like? I asked a gentleman one time, I said, I was going through all kinds of struggles, great guy, pastor. And I said, well, tell me about your prayer life a little bit, Pastor. And so I'll make a long story short, but he'd tell me, I pray all the time. I am a prayer warrior. I said, I get that. Just tell me when you pray. Well, for the most part, I pray in the morning, but unless I have to get up and I got to help the kids and all that kind of stuff and get them off to school, then sometimes I'll push that off to the afternoon. But then sometimes in the afternoon, I end up getting an appointment or a counseling session. So, listen, I can always make sure I get it at the end of the day. Then in the day, you got soccer, you got baseball, you got to pick up the kids, you got dinner, and then listen, God, I've got the end of my day. I have plenty of time. I'm going to pray at the end of my day, and it's going to be a great day. You get to bed, you're laying in bed, you're like, oh, that's right, I forgot. To do that, yeah. I'll do it right now. So when you say you're a prayer warrior, and the reality is, you spent 2 minutes in prayer. Yeah. We have to when I say a concentrated effort, what time have we committed to prayer? And I'm not talking going to the church and fall to your knees and before in a pew or something. I'm just saying our communication with God. You want that supernatural help that we were talking about earlier? It's going to require that. And it's going to require reading some Word of God and to feed that. But we all know this. But in our heart of hearts, everybody right now could ask, what is my prayer life really like? What is my Bible study really like? Am I retaining what I'm reading? And am I in fellowship with other people like myself, such as going to church? And so it takes a concentrated effort to be a Christian. And I'll tell you another reason why is because the devil, I always tell people the devil is a master strategist. He is so much better at this than I am. He's been around a lot longer than I have been. And I'm very aware of that. And it should be kind of a scary thing until you realize that Jesus is the master strategist. So listen, when I say I've lived a good life, I've gone through a lot of difficult things, but man, I'm not doing this thing without God. Till the day I die, I'm not doing it without God. So it takes a lot to be a Christian.
I think the statement is true, and I forget who I heard say this years ago, that if the devil can't lead us into sin, he'll lead us into busyness.
Yeah. And I've been there.
There are so many people who are doing good things. It's not sinful in the classic sense, I guess. We're just busy, and so we're not doing what God has really called us to do.
Yep. It's, in the business world, they don't really care about, for the most, to a degree, they don't care so much about your spiritual life. Okay. The moment you move from let's call it a secular job into a ministry, such as pastors or anybody in ministry, now you are not just fighting the world in a secular environment. You are now fighting a spiritual battle. Now, instead of the devil just kind of having you in his peripheral vision there, he's going,
Yeah.
He's looking you eye to eye.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're not going to do this. I'm going to mess with your kids. I'm going to mess with your finance. I'm going to mess with everything. So there's going to be the battles, and that's why some pastors they just don't make it, and it's really sad. But some of them make it. Some of them, their children rise up to take over their ministries after years, and others say, I want nothing to do with ministry. And so if you're going to go into ministry or something like Mighty Oaks Foundation, you got to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
You got to be praying for it. You got to be alert.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly because I've been there. When I say I've had a good life, I have a good life, but I have battle scars just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about, for a minute, you and I spent about an hour earlier today talking about this. The balance between employment, the thing you do to make money,
right,
and your family. And I think we often have this wrong. How do you balance those two?
Figure out how to get rich. No, it's again, life is I say life is difficult. I am a realist. I'm an analyst.
Yeah. And
people sometimes say, how can someone like that be a Christian? Well, when you've analyzed Jesus enough, you realize how great he is.
Right. Right.
That's what you're bringing into that business life and that family life. To balance that, again, it's very difficult. It's always going to challenge every one of us. I mean, it challenges you and I every day we come to work. Sure. That's how often it happens. So when do we break away from work and spend time with our family? Now, you mentioned earlier today, I thought it was great that pastors often, they have a day off. But they have a day off, not for family, but for golf or some other recreation.
They'll go do something else.
Yeah, they need the recreation too.
Sure.
But again, becoming intentional, you got to take that, you got to make that family time.
Yeah.
It may be uncomfortable for you, may be inconvenience for you, but I think as the adult, as the parent, that is our responsibility. It's time to pack up the kids and go down, and even if we just have to go have lunch somewhere, even if they don't want to. I have a 15-year-old son. He doesn't want to go everywhere I want, and I'm not going to make him go everywhere I want, but sometimes I am.
Yeah.
Hey, son, you're coming with me.
We're going to spend time together.
Or we're going to talk about some things. Yeah. And we've had some great times. I remember, was that long ago, we got done talking, and we were sitting at a Starbucks outside, and when he got done, he said, you know, Dad, I'm going to have this talk with my son someday. It made it. I did okay.
Yes.
That balancing act, it's a balancing act.
I firmly believe that God-given priorities do not run into conflict with one another.
Yes.
If God has established our priorities, then it's going to work. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy or without tension or friction, but if God has given them to us, we can make it work. Where we get into trouble is when we prioritize things in our lives that God didn't prioritize in our lives. And we say, well, I can't do it all. Well, you're not supposed to do it all. You're supposed to do the things that God has laid out for you. And if it's a relationship with him first, which it is, and then the family second, which it is.
Right.
And then, working is a good thing. It's a blessing from God to be able to work. We could run through the Bible and pull out scriptures and examples of that. God gives us employment. He expects for us to steward over that well. Those priorities don't run into conflict if we understand they were given to us by God and understand how they're supposed to work. And what you said there is so important. I think our family is very gracious. They like to have a place to live and food to eat and whatever. They like that. They understand that we might have to work more hours, or for many of our folks go on a deployment or train or do whatever. They get that, as long as when you're home, you're investing in them.
You're home.
You're home.
Yeah, and like we said with those priorities, it's so easy that just put home number 3 instead of
yes.
It can be it becomes, for many of us, it becomes an option. And I think too that when we get ourselves into a financial strain to where we have to work more,
right,
we got to have some more faith, because God's watching our lives. He knows what's going on.
Sure.
Things are not a surprise to him. He's looking at us to say, well, what are you going to do about this?
Yeah.
Could you hear my voice if I was talking to you to go another direction? Right. Do you have the faith to believe that I can fix this for you?
Right.
And sometimes it takes a trial, a tribulation of some form to snap us out of it. And then we're like, well, now where's God?
Yeah.
You know, God is, it's amazing how God is working so much in our lives. And I say all the time, I can't wait to get to heaven because God's going to show me all those amazing things he did for me that I had no idea he did.
Yeah.
That's how great he is.
It's exactly right. I think stewardship in all of those, in all of those things then becomes so important. It's stewarding over the moments and the resources that God gives to you so that he can do the work that he wants to do in you.
And then life becomes fun again. When you can walk down that path, such as I've enjoyed working for companies, but I've far more enjoyed working for ministries. Ministries that are far more disorganized, dysfunctional than the business. But that's because of the purpose, the mission involved in it. Now, the devil knows that's who I am. He's going to challenge that. And I've watched him many times, and I've failed many times. But God's always there. He's got the wink. He's looking at us. It's all right. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. You've said a few times as we've talked, you don't know how people can move forward, can live without a relationship with God. You've talked about your faith. If you could define the importance of faith in a statement or a couple sentences, why is faith important? There are a lot of people who are doing fine financially, they're doing fine in this area or that area without God. We would say that it is impossible to fully be what God created you to be without a relationship with him, which requires faith. Why is faith so important?
It's because faith gets replaced by other objects, possessions, people. We start becoming dependent upon everybody else that we don't have to really have faith. So therefore we start drifting away from God. It just becomes a domino effect. It gets worse and worse and worse. Faith, that's why I say when I talked earlier about your prayer life, I believe everybody should have quiet time with God. Even if it's 5 minutes. If people could put the children off to the side, put the spouse off to the side, put the job off to the side, and just say, this is my time. I'm locking the bedroom door. Nobody's interrupting me. I'm going to kneel on this floor, whatever that looks like, and I'm going to just rest in the peace of God and relax. Listen, it may only be 5 minutes. It may turn into 20 minutes. And then you start getting energized in that supernatural way. God starts coming to you. Your faith starts growing. You start taking leaps of faith, and now you start depending upon God instead of everything else around you. Now, like they say, we're in this fast food world. We want everything now.
Right.
Okay, God, I need this all right now. Now, oh, you can't get that from me right now, God? Okay, I will go look over here.
Sure.
It just drives me crazy.
We're living at a moment in time where so many in our country are dealing with anxiety and fear, really. It's fear. And I've dealt with it. I'll deal with it later today probably. But where there is that anxiety and fear about the future, really it's because there's a lack of faith in a God who's bigger than the future. And we need to put our faith where it really should be, instead of in government or in, whatever. Put it in a God who never changes.
Well, think of all the people who have, who believed or knew God, or thought there's a possibility that there is a God. And they were believing that this huge universe was created by this majestic God. But then the world around them starts telling them a whole nother story. And now what was so grand in their eyes that they were exploring and going to, now they've allowed the environment around them to pull them away from that. And now God becomes very secondary. And if you want to have, I just believe everybody's priority should be first seek God and try it. Just try it. But do it for more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, a week.
Right.
Now, commit yourself to a gradual year of just seeking God. And it's amazing how God will answer you from time to time. And your life will change. Because God always has your back. But he does wait for us to come forward and show us his faith. Otherwise, God would be a dictator God. I'm going to tell you what to do. And he's never been that way. We have that freedom to search for him, to learn about him, and everybody who does finds him, loves him, and ends up going to heaven. And so it makes a beautiful life.
Yeah. We can talk about a lot of other things. The last thing I'd like to talk about is stewardship. Whether it's life stewardship, financial stewardship, in our context, it's organizational stewardship. Mm-hmm. As a business person who moved into the ministry world, working with churches, working with an organization like ours, really, you're the COO, but you could be the chief stewardship officer too. I mean, your role, your responsibility is to steward well, to take care of well, to manage the resources that God gives to Mighty Oaks. In a church, it was the same thing.
Yep.
Can you talk about the importance of stewardship? And I think sometimes people, probably not for an organization like ours, when we talk about having an operating officer, and that makes sense, and our accounting procedures and all that stuff, that makes sense to people with an organization like ours. But in a church setting, there are people who will accuse that church of becoming too much of a business or whatever. But really, it's about managing well the resources that God gives to us. Can you speak to the importance of that, like the spiritual importance of that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's where the devil's going to hit first, and he's going to hit hard. If he can cripple your finances, he can cripple your church. Because people can recover from an illness, they can recover from a job loss, they can recover from all kinds of things. But when the pocketbook, that's a tough one for people to recover from. It's a tough one for them to have faith in. And so, like for the church world, and the sad thing about the church world is finances is not always the priority. We want it all, but we get so pulled by a hurting world that it's very demanding on us, that we are now focused on the mission, which is great, but we in turn neglect the financial stewardship of the church and so forth.
Yeah, there are very few pastors that I know. I know all of them get accused of this, but there are very few pastors I know that got into ministry for financial reasons.
Good point. Exactly right.
It's because they have a heart for broken people.
Right. Yeah. So you always got to bring someone in. You got to bring someone in, a CFO, an accountant, cover that part of your ministry, and because it takes a lot of money to run a ministry. I think that the secular world likes to pick on the church world about that.
Sure.
Gosh, you're always asking for money. Well, so are you every time you sell a shoe.
Right.
And you make a sale, and you've got money in the bank, okay?
And you're doing it just for that money in the bank.
Exactly.
Right.
Whereas the pastor of a church actually has to ask for that money. And that's a tough thing in order to fulfill the mission that may not even be clear. And so it's a tough world when it comes to the financials of church. However, God is always there watching, and it's amazing how those pastors who will, and I should say the pastors who are the prayer warriors, who have that calling on their life, and they can fight those battles. It's amazing that there's always this point where the devil just says, okay, enough is enough, or it's because Jesus stepped in and said, enough is enough. Right. I don't know how that works. I'll find out when I get to heaven. But it's always nice when the devil is pushed away and you've had those victories. And maybe you just got a check for $100,000 and it just answered all your needs. Well, that $100,000 is going to disappear someday. But your faith begins to grow and grow, and some of these churches become multi-million-dollar churches, and they're taking care of their communities like none other, far better than the government is.
Sure. Yep.
So bringing in someone to help you manage all that, I really don't think that the pastor, like you said, took the calling and said, you know what, I really need to make sure that all these finances and everything in our
I really hope I can be a business guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
How about you do that?
Yeah.
And there are people who have that calling in their life, like myself, who love that. And I run into very few people who say, I would love to do your job.
Right.
And I'm like, what's wrong with you? That's what I love to do.
Right.
And I've said to you go preach. You preach all you want. I'm not going to be doing all that. So if Jeremy and I change roles, it messes the whole thing up. But you have your calling in your life. I have my calling in my life. I'm a CEO, but you do a lot of preaching and writing books and everything like that. So a lot of ministry going on there. So we all have our part.
Yeah. God equips each of us differently. It's been amazing to me over the years, and then, even just observing Mighty Oaks over the years, to watch how God blesses when we are doing our very best to be diligent about stewarding what he gives to us. God resources us, but then he expects for us to manage those resources well to reach as many people as possible. And I think in a lot of ways that's the key to, seeing God blessed in a significant way, is managing what God places in our hands in a way that is honest, that is ethical, but that's very spiritual, allowing that to come through to be a blessing to those that we're serving.
Yeah, and Jesus said, you need to take care, the poor is always going to be with us. Take care of the poor.
Yeah.
Take care of the widow.
Yeah.
And if you're not, I should say if you are, there's a lot of blessings within your ministry that come with that. You think about like Mighty Oaks, okay? Specifically for these veterans. Not a lot of organizations out there are equipped to help veterans who are going through PTSD, suicide, high divorce rates, all that kind of stuff. That takes a calling. That's a lot of work. And the fact that it's a Christian organization, I throw it out there right now. We always need your prayers.
Right.
We always need your prayers on a day-to-day basis, because it's a heavy workload.
Yeah.
There's a lot there, but also we see the grace, the mercy, the love of God within here. So we can do what we do.
Yeah, it's incredible. Michael, thank you.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Appreciate the work that you're doing, and I, again, want to underscore the fact that it's so important that we do everything that we can, not just Mighty Oaks Foundation, but as humans, as families, as churches, as organizations that care about God's will, to be in the right position for God to be able to use us.
Amen.
And that's what so much of this comes down to. So thank you for that. For those of you that are watching and listening, thank you for sharing this time with us. I would encourage you, if you have not yet, go and look at what we do as an organization. There are many wonderful organizations, but look at the Mighty Oaks Foundation, mightyoaksprograms.org. You'll find our website there. You can find this and other content on our YouTube channel if you're listening somewhere else. Check out our YouTube channel. Again, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That would be great for those that are listening to the podcast or over at Mojo 50. Thank you for joining us. Wonderful partners there, and thankful for the time to be able to spend with you. Look forward to the next time we are together.